Good Erev Shabbos, everyone. This is Rabbi Meir Asi, Chabad of the West Side. This week's Torah portion is Behar-Bechukotai. It is the conclusion of the book of Yikra, the third Chumash, and of course, when we would be laning in Shul, this would be culminated with the words of Chazak, Chazak, v'nis Chazek. And in our new situation, of course, we are accustomizing ourselves to many things, not being together on Shabbos and spending the time together is something which we really cannot acclimate ourselves to, but we move forward. The common theme of this week's Torah portions is the idea of strength, and it is so timely these days when we are feeling vulnerable. There is, of course, a health vulnerability. There is other issues of vulnerability and discomfort that we are feeling now, and perhaps even weakness. And the Torah portions come to infuse us with a sense of strength. Right from the very beginning, of course, the name of the first Torah portion out of these two is Behar, a mountain which, of course, symbolizes strength and boldness and courage and immovability. And this is Behar. The second Torah portion is Bechukotai, which talks about our unwavering commitment to fulfill the mitzvahs of Hashem, our strength. And as Chassidus teaches us, the word Bechukotai, the statutes of Hashem, also comes from the Hebrew word. It's associated with the Hebrew word chakika, to be engraved, something which is permanent, something which is unchanging, and the very part of the engraved object itself. And of course, the ending of the parsha, as we finish the two parshas, if we were to be reading them in shul, we all call out the words Chazak, Chazak, v'nis Chazek, that we are strong and that we gain strength. And so, obviously, we know for a Jew that the source of our strength is not coming from koichi v'otzim yadi, is not coming from the power of our hand and from our own might. We know that it is Ki Hashem, that it is Hashem who grants us strength, and we do this through, and we gain this strength through the performance of Torah and mitzvos. This is our true source of strength and of power. But the Torah portion will have a specific message to us about how one gains strength, and especially and particularly in these times of vulnerability. And Parshas Behar opens with the mitzvah of Shemitah, that the land must lie fallow during the seventh year, the Shemitah year. It is called both by the names of Shvis and the Shemitah year. We do not work the land, and it is a year in which it is called Shabbos Lashem, a sabbatical year unto Hashem. And many have commented that our current situation with the virus, it is something compared as if we are all in a state of Shabbos all week long. The truth, though, is that more than being in a state of Shabbos, we're probably more similar to being in a state of the sabbatical year. Shabbos, of course, is an absolute prohibition of work, and we don't work whatsoever. The sabbatical year, we are most labors of Shabbos remain permissible during the sabbatical year. One major distinction is that we are not going to our usual place of labor, which is out in the field. We are more centered in our homes, and the activities that we are doing are more in our homes. So in a certain sense, more than our current quarantine being comparable to the Shabbos itself, it is in many ways, it is comparable to the sabbatical year. Most labors are permitted, and we are active, and we are working, but we are doing it primarily from the home and not in our usual place of activity, which in those days was in the field, here in the marketplace. The distinction, the Rebbe points out one of the distinctions between Shabbos, the theme of Shabbos, and of the sabbatical year. Shabbos is, of course, Shabbos Bereishis. It is the Shabbos which commemorates the first Shabbos of creation. It reinforces to us our belief that Hashem was the creator of heaven and earth, and that we are subordinate to his majesty. The sabbatical year has a little more nuanced message to us, and that is that Hashem is truly the owner of everything that we have in our life, that our possessions, our land, everything that we have is in actuality, it is the property of Hashem. And that is the reason why once a year we must relinquish that ownership over our fields, over our assets, and we acknowledge that it is Lashem Haaretz U'Maloya, that it is Hashem who is he is the owner of everything which is in the universe, and that everything that we have is truly under the ownership of Hashem. And we are reminded, of course, during these times, certainly that it is Hashem who is the master of the universe, and that we have less control, perhaps, over the course of affairs than we would like and that we might have thought beforehand. Interestingly, this sabbatical year, there are two separate names which the Torah refers to it. In our Parsha, the Torah refers to the sabbatical year as the Shavis, the Sabbath year. Later in Devarim, it is referred to as the Shemitah year. That is the popular name usually that we refer to it today. The Rambam calls it the laws of Shemitah and Yovel, the Shemitah and the Jubilee year. That's become the more popular name, but in our Torah portion it's referred to as Shavis. Our Torah portion talks more about the agricultural ramifications of the sabbatical year, not to work the land. And in Devarim, it talks primarily about the lending ramifications of the release of loans during the sabbatical year. But even this term Shemitah, the verb of Shamot, is also used in reference in Parshas Mishpatim. It is used in reference to also the agricultural aspects that we have to relinquish our working of the fields and our ownership of that which the fields produce. And perhaps to gain insight into these two names, the name of Shvis and Shemitah, we can look at a dispute between Rabbi Yosef Kairoi and the Mabit, Rabbi Yosef Mitrani from Trani, who argued in the 16th century, which was, of course, in Sfad. This was the century of Sfad in which they produced so much Torah in the legal sense with Rabbi Yosef Cairo there, so much Torah, of course, in the Kabbalistic sense. It was in the Arizal, and you had in the Sfad during the 16th century the concentration of such great luminaries of the Torah, both in the revealed and in the esoteric part of the Torah. And it came that they debated an essential question as to how to look at the sabbatical year. Is it that during the sabbatical year that it is God who, so to speak, releases our ownership? He renders ownerless all of the fields and all that the fields produce, and it's not contingent whether we want to or not. Afkusa de Malcha, it is the king who renders the fields to be ownerless. Or is it that we are being directed by Hashem, that it is incumbent upon us, and that is the mitzvah which is incumbent upon us, that we should relinquish ownership over our fields and that which our fields produce? It was on this point that Rabbi Yosef Cairo and the Mabit argued. And the question at hand was that, of course, in Israel in those days, in our days also, many fields are owned by non-Jews. And if these fields grow produce during the sabbatical year, obviously the non-Jew is not declaring and relinquishing their ownership. They don't have the mitzvah of Shemitah is not incumbent upon them as a personal obligation. So what would be the status of this fruit, whether it is subject to the tithing laws or not, the Meiser laws? If it remains under private ownership, then it could be subject to the laws of tithing. If it is something that Hashem renders the produce of Israel, that it is all going to be ownerless, then even if the non-Jew themselves did not declare it ownerless, it is being subject it is ownerless by virtue of Hashem's decree. And so this argument between Rabbi Yosef Cairo, who said that it would be it is incumbent upon us to declare the produce to be ownerless, the Mabit, who says that it happens automatically from Hashem, is perhaps associated with the difference between this terminology of Shavis and Shemitah. Shavis, of course, invokes the concept of the Shabbos. The Shabbos is something that happens it happens by virtue from above, that Hashem has designated this day to be a holy day. Whether we acknowledge that, whether we do not acknowledge it, it is something which is imposed upon us from above. It is the Shabbos, and by referring to the sabbatical year as Shavis and equating it to the mechanism of Shabbos, it would seem that name Shavis seems to imply the idea that this is something which is coming from above the status of the sabbatical year. When we use the word Shemitah, and especially the verb in the Tashta that we must let go, the word Shamot, Shin Mem Tes, as a shorish, refers to letting go, detaching oneself, letting something fall away. This is the verb of Shemitah. This is something that we have to do, that we have the field and we have that which is growing with the field, and we are being commanded by Hashem that once every 7 years we have to release our hold. We have to let go of that which is in the field. We have to let go of that which we saw as being the source of our livelihood and of our wealth, and it is our hand that must become detached and let go of it. And so these are the two perspectives, whether it is something which happens automatically, that it becomes ownerless, whether it is something that requires us to actually release our hand and to let go of that which was ours. And to a certain extent, that this plays into our current situation. We have, from above, from Hashem's plans, which we do not fully understand, of course, sometimes not even partially understand, we have been put in a state of sabbatical. We're home, we're still working from home, but to a certain extent it is like a sabbatical year. But perhaps the full power of this experience and the strength that we can draw from the experience is not just when we conform to the situation which we are presented with. We have been put into this sabbatical. But what's most important for us now is perhaps mentally our attitude to let go of those things that we thought that provided our strength, that our routine of going to work, and all those things and those assets that we felt that this is what our strength and security comes from. Perhaps we have to ourselves let go of them, to recognize that that is not the source of our strength, that the Shemitah year teaches us that the source of our strength is exclusively in the hands of Hashem. Ki hu oso l'chol chayil. He is the one who grants us valor and strength. And so, as we read these parshas, as we prepare for the culmination of the book of Vayikra, it is incumbent upon us to let go of those things which we do not control, and we are reminded so strongly that we are not in control of everything. So we must practice the Shemitah, letting go of that which we do not truly own, letting go of that which we do not truly control, but simultaneously seizing and grasping and holding on to that which we do own. We own, of course, our soul. We have ownership over our free will. We have ownership to live a moral life and to use the time that we have in the most productive way for ourselves, for our families, and for Hashem. And when we let go of that which we don't control, when we seize that which we do control, then we connect ourselves to Hashem, and we will truly all together experience Chazak, Chazak, V'nis Chazek. Good Shabbos.